This is the BBC. For details of our complete range of programmes, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
Welcome to the latest global news, recorded at 14 hours GMT on Sunday the 7th of September. I'm Oliver Conway with a selection of highlights from across BBC World Service News today. Coming up, a shaky ceasefire is under threat in Ukraine, where exchanges of mortar fire could be heard at Donetsk airport in the east. In Iraq, the American Air Force is bombing positions of Islamic State bandits as the militants advance towards the strategically important Haditha Dam.
The Iraqi government asked us for their support in those strikes. Second, it was the Iraqi security forces on the ground who conceived of the operation. They too, the Iraqi security force, Air Force, is conducting strikes. Haditha Dam is a critically important facility for Iraq. It is, I think, the second largest hydroelectric dam in Iraq.
As the pro-independence camp in Scotland appears to gain ground with just 11 days to go until the referendum, London promises the Scots new powers should they vote to stay in the United Kingdom.
Much greater power to control tax rates, more control over public expenditure, more control over welfare rates, all of which I think satisfy a Scottish demand that decisions that affect Scotland are taken in Scotland.
And more than just child's play, a new campaign to get people drawing with chalk on the streets.
My name is Sandro. I'm drawing like a glass of wine. I'm from Italian. There is a lot of philosophy in a glass of wine.
But we begin in Ukraine, where a ceasefire that was born under a dark cloud of scepticism is looking shakier than ever. There have been reports that one woman was killed and 3 people injured in heavy shelling in the southern port city of Mariupol, while Ukrainian and pro-Russian forces have been exchanging mortar fire as they fight for control of Donetsk airport. Our correspondent Richard Galpin went to see the situation for himself.
We've just come back from the airport, and whilst we were there, we heard mortars being fired. We think both outgoing from the airport and also incoming as well. So clearly there is some fighting going on there. The situation has escalated since yesterday, Saturday, when it seemed pretty quiet. We met actually also with an observer mission from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. He believed that it was mostly outgoing fire. The airport is in the hands of Ukrainian troops at the moment, so that would be the Ukrainians firing towards rebel positions around the airport.
Would that suggest then that they were the ones who'd broken the ceasefire?
Difficult to tell because we also certainly saw some mortar rounds coming in as well, which means the rebels have been firing. But it seems it's been going on much more today. There were early reports of shelling going on at the airport, and so clearly the situation has escalated. But the observer from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe we spoke to just at the airport, he said that although it was serious and it must stop, it did not mean the end of the ceasefire, at least the fighting here at Donetsk airport. He said that, these things quite often happen in the early stages of a ceasefire, so it did not mean that the ceasefire had been completely undermined.
And how heavily is the airport defended? How much would it take for the rebels to take it back?
It's very difficult to tell, but our understanding is that there is a contingent of Ukrainian troops inside the main building there. Where exactly they are, it's difficult to tell, whether they're kind of in bunkers or in the basement holding out. But I don't think it's a particularly large contingent. So I think the feeling is, certainly before the ceasefire, that it was only a matter of time before the rebels would be able to take control of the airport. And obviously it is a key strategic location, and the rebels will be very keen to get hold of it if they can.
Richard Galpin at Donetsk airport. Andrei Shevchenko is a member of the Ukrainian parliament. He's with the party of the former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. So, is this a ceasefire in name only? A question put to him by James Kumarasamy.
Russia has been violating the ceasefire from the very first hours, but we still believe that this ceasefire could be the first step to finally achieve peace in the east of the country.
But if the ceasefire isn't holding, surely it can't be.
I think it would be insane to trust Putin after everything that has happened in the east of the country and in the Crimea in the last year. But we do believe that it's a chance to achieve peace, and we want to use that.
Why do you think it can be a chance to achieve peace?
We believe that sooner or later Putin will understand that it's an absolutely suicidal strategy to do what he has been doing in Ukraine. I think by now it's absolutely clear that he has been challenging the whole civilized world, and we do believe that at some point he will have to stop.
I'm having a bit of difficulty finding where your optimism, your confidence is coming from. Surely what has happened now is that he has de facto been able to consolidate what he has done in the east of the country.
There are not too many things to be optimistic about what we see in the Crimea and in the east of the country. And obviously there are a lot of questions on this deal which was achieved in Minsk. We still don't feel whether it will really stop the bloodshed. We still don't know whether we'll see the Russian army and the Russian mercenaries leaving the country. But once again, we do want to use every chance to achieve peace.
How concerned are you that the decision to sign this agreement has led quite a few supporters of the government, of President Poroshenko, to call him a traitor, to say this is a betrayal of what has been fought for, and this is essentially ceding to Russia parts of the country?
I think there are key questions which the Ukrainian public would like to have the answers to. First, will the Russian army and the mercenaries withdraw from the country? Second, will we really see a stop of the bloodshed? And finally, will there be guarantees that Ukraine will secure its right to choose its destiny? On the other hand, I think people would really like to see a stop of the bloodshed, and they would like to use any chance possible.
Even if that means giving up part of their country after all the lives that have been lost?
No, that is absolutely out of discussion. We, the Ukrainians, we believe that our right to choose our destiny and to live within our internationally recognized borders will be secured. I think
by whom, though? Because the president went to the NATO summit. That there are no guarantees of military help, for example, that you would like, and without that, you're not going to defeat the Russian-backed army, are you?
Well, it's true, and I think the Ukrainians would really like to see more support from the NATO countries and from the West. I would say we are happy to see that we have this. We see this moral solidarity with us. I think the challenge is to find the proper way how we can convert this moral solidarity, this support, into very concrete steps that could secure our freedom.
You're saying you still believe that this can be the best chance for peace. How do you see the next few days?
Well, the Ukrainian troops are ordered not to shoot unless they have to defend themselves. And I think long-term, it's obvious that we should go ahead with a political solution of the crisis. I think Ukraine is ready to go ahead with decentralization. Kiev is ready to give as much powers as possible to the regions, including the east of the country. All of that is possible once we finally stop the bloodshed.
Andrei Shevchenko, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Now to Iraq, where US warplanes have carried out airstrikes against Islamic State fighters trying to seize the Haditha Dam. It's the first time the Americans have extended their air campaign to targets in the province of Anbar, which is inhabited mainly by Sunnis. The US Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel explained why the air raids were necessary.
The Iraqi government asked us for their support in those strikes. Second, it was the Iraqi security forces on the ground who conceived of the operation. They too, the Iraqi security force, Air Force, is conducting strikes. Haditha Dam is a critically important facility for Iraq. It is, I think, the second largest hydroelectric dam in Iraq.
I asked our correspondent Jim Muir in northern Iraq how important Haditha Dam is.
It is an important bit of infrastructure, and had it come under the control of the Islamic militants, it could not only have given them a source of power and water and so on, and perhaps denied that to other people, but also it would put them in control of what could be used as a weapon of mass destruction, as was the case with Mosul Dam up in the north, which they had seized, but were thrown off it by Kurdish fighters with American air power helping them out. So these dams are regarded as extremely important. The Americans have a particular sensitivity towards them. They don't want to see them falling into the hands of the militants. So that's one reason why they stepped in. But in doing so, they have actually crossed a line which they themselves had drawn. They said they would not act like this on behalf of an unbalanced Shiite-dominated government in Baghdad, which continues to be the case because there is not yet a new government in place. There are lots of efforts for that, but it's not there yet. Despite that, the Americans have gone ahead, basically, should we say, mission creeping or just going beyond the original remit they had set themselves.
Because, of course, they had helped Kurdish fighters up in the north with these airstrikes. Why is it a problem for them to be helping the current Iraqi government in Baghdad?
Well, essentially, the Kurds are not controversial from a Western point of view. Kurdistan has been sort of allied to the West for several decades in one way or another. So they've been partners for quite some time. The Iraqi government is a different business. The Americans have quite openly blamed the outgoing Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki for creating a very sectarian, divided situation, basically favouring his own Shia community, excluding the Sunnis, alienating them and so on. So that part of what is going on here is a sectarian civil war, with the Sunnis feeling a lot of grievances against the central government in Baghdad. So that's why the Americans had held back from basically acting as the air force or the strike force on behalf of Nouri al-Maliki and Shia militias, which is the situation on the ground, given the collapse to a large extent of the Iraqi army. So that's why they've held back from giving them that kind of support, while not hesitating really to give it to the Kurds in the north.
Jim Muir talking to me from northern Iraq. It seems the Palestinian Unity government deal is in trouble, with President Mahmoud Abbas clearly frustrated that his writ doesn't reach Gaza, where Hamas is in charge. I heard more from our Arab Affairs editor, Sebastian Usher.
Well, I don't think it's any surprise that, as you say, there's trouble over this unity government. It took many years after the two sides broke apart in 2006 and then 2007, with Hamas taking full control in Gaza, the Palestinian Authority under Mr. Abbas staying in control in the West Bank. A deal was finally achieved back in April. But, I mean, there was no sense of a time that this was going to go smoothly. I think things, in a sense, have got worse since the Israeli offensive in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority, Mr. Abbas again, was given by international authority, really, the go-ahead to try and reassume some proper central control of Gaza. And Hamas has so far, from what he's saying and what we've been seeing, has shown no real eagerness to join that. So today he was expressing in his strongest words so far, and this is something he's been saying in the past couple of weeks in any case, but saying if Hamas won't accept a Palestinian state with one government, one law, one set of arms, then there can't be any partnership and we will break it down. So he's basically saying, you know, Hamas has got to sign up to this deal fully or there's no deal.
So are we at crisis point, or could this yet be resolved?
I think we're at permanent crisis, really, and it will go up and down. I mean, this has been you can liken it to, a marriage, which has been one that has really not been wanted by either side for a long time, but they can't separate. Now, the deal was to bring them together. Hamas, of course, is likely to resist that because essentially both under the agreement and even more so, as I say, with what's happened in Gaza, the sense is the Palestinian Authority should really be reassuming control there. And clearly Hamas is not going to accept that easily. They're saying that Mr. Abbas, their spokesman, is speaking out of turn, that this is unhelpful and that the reconciliation talks are going to continue, and they're open to, every means of trying to enable that to happen, and saying essentially that Mr. Abbas should be talking to them, not talking to the media about what's happening.
Sebastian Usher, our Arab Affairs editor. This is Global News, the best stories, interviews and on-the-spot reporting from the BBC World Service. To comment on this podcast or any of the topics in it, send an email to globalpodcast@bbc.co.uk or post at facebook.com/BBC World Service. Next to developments a bit closer to home, and with just 11 days to go before the referendum on Scottish independence, the British government says plans will be laid out in the next few days to give Scotland greater powers if it decides to stay in the UK. It comes on the same day that one opinion poll has for the first time suggested a narrow majority of voters in favour of leaving the UK. Other opinion polls show other results. Our correspondent Rob Broomby is in the Scottish city of Glasgow. He told me more about that new offer.
Well, yeah, Oliver, it was always likely that will be an offer of further powers to Scotland if they vote to stay within the UK. But this does go a bit further than anything we've seen before. George Osborne, UK Finance Minister, made what you might call a bittersweet offer to the Scots with just 11 days to go. He repeated, though, the bitter side first. There will be no currency union, he repeated, in the event of Scottish independence. They won't be able to use the pound. That is debated on the other side. They say they'd still like to do that. The strategy, of course, was thought to have backfired, alienated some Scots. But vote to stay, and they could, he said, get the best of both worlds. And he unveiled this package of proposals he said had been agreed by all the main Westminster parties. Now, the Chancellor, UK Finance Minister, as we call him, George Osborne, went much further than anyone had gone before.
Much greater power to control tax rates, more control over public expenditure, more control over welfare rates, all of which I think satisfy a Scottish demand that decisions that affect Scotland are taken in Scotland without the risks of separation. And I think that is the best of both worlds.
Well, he went on, Oliver, to say that a yes vote could not be seen as a protest vote for 5 years or so, like electing another government, another parliament. This was a decision for 300 years, really trying to pile in and focus minds, really, on how important this decision is now with just 11 days to go. But confusing the message rather slightly, another leading government minister in the UK government, Alistair Carmichael, again on the air this morning, rather blurring the issue, saying there's nothing new in this offer. That's, of course, set the political commentators here in a bit of a lather, saying that the message is again confused. The Yes campaign, though, they make it very clear that this is, from their point of view, a triumph of hope over fear, as they put it, that the new opinion polls showing the lead for the first time for the Yes campaign is something to be seen as exceptionally positive. I need to stress, of course, that most polls, all polls, in fact, other than this one, have shown leads for the No campaign. Pat Kane, though, for Yes Scotland, said the debate was pulling in people not normally taking part in political debate.
What we're projecting here is somewhere between 75, 80, 85% turnout on this referendum. And the people who are turning out are what has been generally described as the missing million. This is a whole load of people who are at the sharp end of economics and life in general, who are becoming re-engaged by the idea that politics can deliver something to improve their lives.
Well, there's another matter in all this, of course. The leader of the No campaign, Alistair Darling, has said this is a wake-up call. They need to now really focus their attempts on convincing people to vote to stay. One meeting you'd like to be a fly on the wall in today, though. David Cameron, UK Prime Minister, will meet the Queen at Balmoral, her retreat up here in Scotland. And you'd like to know exactly what was being said there, because the mood music is the palace is starting to get concerned. So the Yes campaign says they will keep the head of state. But of course, there are a lot of questions to be answered as to whether that will actually happen in the longer term were Scotland to be independent. One thing is clear, with 11 days to go, it is going to be a white-knuckle ride to the bitter end. It's very close indeed now.
Rob Broomby talking to me from Glasgow. If Scotland does go its own way, there have been other precedents in Europe. 21 years ago, Czechoslovakia split in two, and the people of Slovakia were told by some sceptics they would never survive on their own. Paul Moss has this report from the Slovak capital, Bratislava.
It all happened very quickly. On January 1st, 1993, when Slovakia celebrated becoming an independent nation, it was only 6 months since the decision had been made. There'd been no referendum, no yes and no campaigns for these citizens. It was politicians who decided to split Czechoslovakia in two. With independence came new challenges, designing new Slovak stamps, printing and issuing Slovak passports. Vladimir Masar was the governor of Slovakia's first ever central bank, and he had to launch a whole new currency. But the hardest challenge for any new country, he says, is to win credibility on the international money markets.
You need a long time for building of credibility. I try to explain our policy, what are our targets, because we were a new partner for them. It was a long process.
What advice would you give to other nations, other groups of people who are considering breaking away and becoming independent?
Nobody knows in the beginning of such process what you find in the end. If they still think that bring more pluses than minuses, okay, why not try it?
Over at Slovakia's parliament building, I met a man convinced that the minuses of Slovak independence still outweigh any pluses. František Šebej is the chairman here of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee. You won't meet a more proud Slovak, no Czech in this man's DNA. Yet he misses the higher profile he believes his nation had back when it was united with its neighbour to the northwest.
Czechoslovakia was a brand. It's music, it's movies, it's literature, and together it was much more important. Slovakia, of course, has less punch, less weight. I mean, geopolitical weight of both parts of it were reduced down.
But one thing certainly went up in independent Slovakia, the state of the economy. On a rainy day in Bratislava, I walked down the busy street which hugs the River Danube, expensive cars racing up and down, pricey restaurants on the river's shore, signs of growing wealth that exceeded all predictions. I was joined at the river by Beata Balogová, now the editor of the Slovak Spectator newspaper. But back in 1993, she was an undergraduate student, deeply anxious about what independence would mean for her country.
The experience of the split of the country was very emotional. My father was actually crying, and I did have a feeling like what will happen to the country. They just broke it.
Well, here we are, 21 years later. Slovakia is thriving, certainly compared to some of the worst predictions. How do you feel about being a Slovak and not a Czechoslovak?
For me, it took almost a decade to feel normal about saying I am from Slovakia. I mean, the progress is amazing. I am happy to be a Slovak.
So Scotland is about to vote on whether they too will go it alone in the way that Slovakia did. What advice would you give them?
To be very cautious about the decision what they are making, because after that initial enthusiasm about something new starting, then the reality might come and it's very difficult to go back.
Beata Balogová, the editor of the Slovak Spectator, ending that report by Paul Moss. Finally, chalk has always been a popular artistic medium used by children in playgrounds and artists on pavements. A new project aims to get members of the public involved in creating street art using chalk. We Are Chalkers have already held events in Paris, London and San Francisco. Nastaran Tavakoli-Far went along to find out more.
Do you want to chalk with us? Come chalk with us.
It's around 9 in the evening and I'm in London's trendy Shoreditch neighbourhood. There are about half a dozen people all crouched on the ground and they're busy drawing with chalk.
Hello, I'm Audrey Richard-Laurent. I'm French. The project is We Are Chalkers. Everyone is creative, but there is not so much place in the city to express yourself. There is a lot of asphalt, so why not to take over like the world with chalk? And you can express yourself with poetry, with drawing. As soon as it's rain, everything will vanish, so it's ephemeral and playful.
Why do you think the fact that it's ephemeral is so powerful?
People sometimes are not confident because they think, oh no, I'm not a good drawer, or something. If they know it will be vanish soon, they get confident, they can try. And I think it's important to offer a canvas for people to try.
We have got lots of cartoons and there's a very, very exquisite, beautiful flower in blue. It has long flowing petals and someone has drawn a stick person in red and written next to it, "Smile, you're a star." I'm going to see why these people are taking part.
My name is Sandro. I'm drawing like a glass of wine. I'm from Italian. There is a lot of philosophy in a glass of wine.
You were very reluctant to draw, and you've done a very happy-looking stick man, saying, "'Cause I'm happy."
Today was a good day, so I expressed myself via the stick man on the floor, and I still genuinely think that my drawing is really appalling.
My name is Justine, and I'm drawing flowers. I was in the bar, and I walk on the restaurant, and I stop for draw.
My name is Doye. I'm chalking a house. It looks like I've got the shadow wrong from the door. It should be on the other side. That doesn't really make sense.
Why are you doing a house?
It's about the only thing I can draw.
And how does it feel to revisit drawing with chalk?
It's a bit weird, but enjoyable.
I chalked a picture of my friend Barrington with a spoon around his neck.
You have some chalk on your face.
Yeah, I know. It's from him. Can you get it off for me? Is there a lot?
Do you mind me licking my finger?
Lick away.
Let me see. There's a little bit of blue chalk. Have either of you drawn with chalk before?
No, this is my first time, and I've got to say I'm pretty proud.
It looks pretty good.
I even stole a chalk, so I can come back later when I'm a bit more drunk and get even better at it.
I actually quite enjoyed it. Can I have some of the chalk?
For me, it's like so relaxing, you know, to have like this direct contact with the city and to do something like bigger than A4 paper, you know. I really like to involve the body and to connect with other people. It's like ice-breaking also, so it's a fantastic medium.
That was Audrey Richard-Laurent of We Are Chalkers. And that's all from us for now, but an updated version of the Global News podcast will be available to download in 12 hours. I'm Oliver Conway. Until next time, goodbye.